Welcome to Ashley on CBD, your one-stop podcast where we drop the truth on all things CBD and maybe some pop culture too. Stick around as we delve deep into the practical health benefits of CBD for you.
Hello and welcome to the show. Today we're talking cannabis and CBD water solubility. So most of you probably know cannabis is an oil. Oil and water don't mix well together. So when you put a cannabis beverage together, it takes a lot of expertise to do it right and to do it in a healthy manner. So today we're talking to Keith Woelfel, who's the Director of R&D for Stillwater Brands. They make Ripple here in Colorado, as well as Caliper CBD. Keith is a 20 plus year veteran of Mars Wrigley, where he was in product development and confections and a health and nutrition venture group. And Keith's got several patents for functional foods, beverages, and confectionery products underway. We worked together in the past at Stillwater. Keith's a great guy. This is a great episode and very informative around what the key factors are to consider when you're thinking about cannabis and water solubility. Enjoy the show. Thank you. As always, this episode is brought to you by Magic Immune A Tea. It's a great tasting tea loaded with mushrooms and what they call organic adaptogens, which are herbs and spices that give it a great flavor. It features reishi, lion's mane, cordyceps, and chaga mushrooms, as well as 12 other organic and great tasting herbs and spices like turmeric, ginger, cacao, all kinds of stuff. In fact, they say it's packed with life, and you can get it at packedwithlife.com or on Amazon. The benefits are, let me just read it off the box here for you. So given all of these different mushrooms as well as adaptogens, may provide support for a healthy immune system and lungs, natural focused energy, a healthy heart, calm brain, positive mood, healthy digestion, cholesterol, and weight loss. So that really is packed with life. I like it most because of the immune support as well as the brain support. And again, it's called Magic Immune A Tea. Muna AT, and you can get it at packedwithlife.com or on Amazon. Give it a try. It tastes great. I drink it every day on ice. Take care. Hey, Keith.
Ashley, how are you? Long time no see.
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Can you hear me okay and see me okay?
All good. Thanks for taking the time today.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity on it.
Absolutely. So I like to just kind of dive into these things. So if you're game, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself, and then we'll just go from there.
Sure. My name is Keith Woelfel. I'm Director of R&D over at Caliper Foods. A little bit about my background. I am now 5 years, been in the cannabis industry. Prior to that, I worked for product development has been my passion all my life. I worked for 20 years for Mars Chocolate on little brands, on big brands, cocoa flavanols, health and wellness. Background is food through and through. I come from a family of engineers, for better or for worse. It creates how I think as far as product and food coming together. To me, they are tightly integrated. So product design and process design. And for me, what got me to make the big leap 5 years ago is, I've always had a passion for functional foods, and I also had a passion for health and wellness. So seeing where in the earliest of days where cannabis can be seen as a functional food, I found incredibly intriguing, and seeing all the entrepreneurial opportunities that were starting to pop up, particularly in Colorado, back as early as 2016, was actually 2014 watching the space. So that is what drove me to make the big leap from basically corporate America into the cannabis space.
That's great, Keith. Thank you. And I know you're very humble, but I've worked with Keith in the past, and Keith's top notch. Smart as they come in the cannabis industry. So thank you for joining us today, Keith. Just to start out, I mean, I most people that are listening probably understand that cannabis is an oil, and that when you try to make oil and water, it doesn't really work out too well. But maybe not everybody understands that. So can you talk to us about what is water solubility, and is that even the right term? Let's talk about that.
Sure. If you want to get technical, it's miscible in water versus fully soluble in water. But what we're seeing is salad dressing is a great example. We have oil and water, when they don't mix, your oil layer will rise right to the top, and you have this thick layer of oil, and then you have the water soluble phase on the bottom. So to make something water soluble and water compatible and water miscible is taking the oil phase and make it so it mixes nice and evenly within the water phase. And when it's properly mixed and properly done, what you do is you create fat droplets that are wrapped, tiny little fat droplets that are wrapped around with an emulsifier. And the emulsifier has a fat loving region to it, and it has a water loving region to it. And if you will, it almost acts like a, it brings the two surfaces together and it keeps it fully emulsified. So that's the role of the emulsifier. So anything you see that's water soluble, all water soluble components have to have some sort of emulsifier in order to make them work. If there's something on the label that leaves out the emulsifier, then what you see a lot of times in a space, it's not that they figured out some magic ingredient or magic pixie dust that goes in. They're just not, it's not being labeled. So again, to make it water soluble, you need fat, water, and an emulsifier.
So that makes sense. Why is it, I guess, obviously, if you're trying to make a beverage, right, clearly water solubility makes sense. But beyond that, why is water solubility important to cannabis?
So some products, you just can't make it work without water soluble. So if you wanted to do a CBD tea or a THC tea, for example, or even coffee, you need a water soluble component to bring the THC or cannabinoids into the beverage phase. Otherwise, it's going to be stuck or trapped to the tea leaf or stuck or trapped to the coffee, like in a K-cup. So you just will not work. You can actually put it in a tea bag or put it in a coffee cup, in a K-cup, you're just not going to get into the product. So fundamentally, you will not have a product that performs to consumers. What we're also seeing, based on clinical research, is you get a fundamental benefit of making cannabinoids water soluble. And the benefit is actually twofold. You get much, much more rapid absorption, and you typically get more of it. So you get more absorption as well. And then really a third effect is most of it tends to bypass the liver. So you get direct absorption from small intestines to the bloodstream. So for something like Delta 9, you're absorbing Delta 9 in its water-based format. If it's in its fat-based format, what you see is typically it's going to be a much stronger or much delayed effect. So instead of being absorbed in 20 or 30 or 40 minutes, is it being absorbed in 2 to 3 hours? So much later, much lesser. But then it does another thing, which isn't necessarily favorable. When it finally does get absorbed, it gets processed by the liver. Delta 9 gets converted to Delta 11. And when Delta 11 is much more potent. So when it hits you harder. So it's the opposite of a smooth onset. So there is one of the...
It's kind of a late punch.
The late punch, exactly, versus smooth, predictable onset. So there is one of the big benefits of water soluble. It's more predictable, it's faster, it's smoother onset.
And so talk about that research a little bit. I know you guys have been leaders in this, and I give all the credit to you guys for doing that. In a land of, no research at all, you're bringing forward, actual science to help us understand this. What have you found with regards to that?
So Ashley, we're on our fourth pharmacokinetic study. And what we're finding is, again, a consistent theme that water soluble components can be start being absorbed within 10 minutes. So that's great. So for example, if if you're drinking coffee, you want the effects of caffeine now, not 3 hours from now. So we see that consistently. Water-based, faster absorbed. The other thing that's been very fascinating to see is the interperson variability has been phenomenal to see. So if you give 10 people the same exact product, and then you measure the pharmacokinetics, you're measuring how much blood is getting absorbed, and you're measuring at different time pools. So time 0, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, all the way up. And you'll see all 10 people in the room taking the exact same dose, the exact same product on the exact same conditions, fasting, the whole 9 yards. You'll see very different profiles, person to person.
Wow.
And we're seeing that quite a bit for both THC and CBD. So the next
you're controlling for fasting, right? So you're taking that out of the equation and you're still seeing this.
Absolutely. That's why you have to be very rigorous in your control. So 12-hour fast, 44-day prior absences of any cannabinoids.
Mm-hmm.
And what you have to do the research properly is you have to do what's called a crossover design. So if you're testing 5 different products on, say, 15 different people, each of the 15 people have to try the product 1 per week. And that's a crossover design. And this way it helps wash out or normalize the data. And it helps take into account all the incredible differences person to person to person for variability. And when you do a design like that, when all 15 people try all 5 different products over a course of 5 different weeks, then you can start teasing out the data statistically and really start seeing trend analysis on what's happening for fat-based versus water-based, and understanding different formulas, for example, how much it improves absorption rates. So,
wow. So are you going down the path of, I won't call it personalized dosing, but more, you could get into like groupings, right? You could say, like, if you're this type of person, here's the cannabis that you should consume if you're worried about, or you get a better reaction faster versus slower.
Yeah, you can almost envision that if you could group people to say what is considered the normal absorption, and then you can have other factors of other populations that are, should we say, different absorbers. Right. And can you custom tailor products to either subgroup would be interesting. The other thing would be really fascinating to find out, what are the key drivers? Is it gut health that's changing it? Is it genetics, or is it a combination of both? And we believe right now, we theorize it's a combination of both. So gut health and genetics. That's
amazing. So you have more of these continuing and planned, I'm assuming, more of these studies.
We do. We pretty far along right now on a pharmacokinetic study on edibles with THC. So 10 milligram servings, looking at different gummies, different products that are fast acting, different ones that are fat-based, and then also looking at dissolvables as well. And then looking at characterizing how well these things are being absorbed, how fast they're being absorbed. And one of the benefits on this, to your point, Ashley, is, what do you do with this information? Well, one thing you can do with this very powerful is it helps you design products that overall are more effective for consumers. Mm-hmm. And you can understand, because some of the stuff is conventional wisdom doesn't always hold true. So for example, there is and I'm going to put in a little bit of an air quote, there's a myth out there that if you make a nanoemulsion, smaller is absolutely better. So the smaller you make the emulsion, the faster and better it's going to get absorbed. And that is a very strong, very well pervasive theory in the industry. But the more continue to investigate that, it's a myth. When we test it in humans, it's a factor, it's not the factor. Mother Nature is not that simple. It doesn't work that one magic bullet. What it comes down to, what we're finding is the type of emulsifier is actually a very big factor. So it's a combination of size and emulsifier. And if you start thinking about it, it makes sense, right? If you're doing transport in small intestines across the intestinal wall lining into the bloodstream, you got to remember the emulsifier is what wraps around your CBD or THC droplet. And you're going to want something that transports through the small intestine into your bloodstream. So that surface of the emulsion, how well it works within the body's chemistry, is what helps to pull it through.
I'm thinking like I'm seeing like stickiness, right? Well, like as a metaphor, right? If it's sticking to your insides, then it's probably not going to be going where it needs to go.
Right.
At the right pace. Yeah.
Exactly. And then what happens is if you don't absorb it, you're not going to get the benefits.
Right.
And just flat out excreted.
Right. You're disappointed in the product choice.
Exactly.
So, you guys work on the Stillwater Brands here in Colorado, and you also have your Caliper CBD products. What can you tell us about those without getting, into proprietary, too far? But what can you tell us about those products as far as how you guys go about doing water solubility?
So with the water solubility, we treat it as platform technology. And you really, to make this, to oversimplify it, you have 2 sets of end products. One is taking any cannabinoid, whether it be CBD, THC, CBN, CBG, agnostic at that point, making it water soluble. And then you can go in one of 2 ways. It become a liquid concentrate and all the needs it has for that. So it could be to add to, say, seltzers or other products like that. So that is its unique form factors, liquid concentrate, and all the design factors that go to it. which are very different. And if you take that same liquid concentrate and if you dry it down to a powder, and now you have a very different form factor that could be, say, like a ready to mix product or something like Ripple or something like Caliper. So all the technologies stem ultimately from one of those two form factors. It's going to be a liquid that's going to have, say, a year shelf life in a product that could have another year shelf life, so 2 years. And is it going into something that might be an aluminum can? And you have to worry about scalloping, absorption of the can liner, and all that, right? Or is it something that's going to be made into a powder that you need to really emphasize cold water solubility, for example, and all the design attributes that go into that, both product and process, to create the end benefit to consumers.
Mm-hmm. So how is it different what you guys do versus, say somebody that may claim, I mean, you've done the research clearly to show, but what can you tell us about the process that you think is the reason why, you're having different results than maybe other people, or maybe what makes your process more attractive?
A lot of people underestimate how challenging it's going to be to make a very good emulsion that tastes good and is actually physically and chemically stable emulsion. And the only way you're going to know that is truly by design and validation models and putting the work and energy and science in there to really get down to the molecular level and really understand how the formulation and the process are working together to create something that's truly stable and functional. You'll see a lot of emulsions in the marketplace, and it's not only just in cannabis, in other functional foods, the emulsions themselves are actually inherently unstable. So you'll see poor solubility, and some of the detriments of poor solubility, besides everything settling out in the bottom of the container, for example, so you're not getting good homogeneity of the actual product to consumers. You also see things like the term is scalloping. When the emulsion gets loose or starts getting undone, it's no longer a tight emulsion, actually starts literally becoming undone, it'll stick to the side of the can. So the actual product itself that is in the can or in the beverage isn't leaving. So you're not consuming it. So again, I think what makes us different, and anybody in a space who wants to do due diligence, have a good product, is really looking deep into the science from the formulation and the product when you're converting it, making the product, and then taking it further and looking through really due diligence on shelf life and really understanding the product form factor, how consumers are using it. So it's taking it all the way through. So from supply chain to conversion process to validation to how consumers are using it, and really making sure it's delivering what's intended to deliver to consumers.
And how, I know, even when we were working together a couple of years ago, you were just getting started on a lot of the shelf life testing for some of the Caliper based products, I believe, and Ripple based products. What have you learned since that time from terms of shelf life?
I've learned quite a bit. As a rule of thumb, CBD is very stable. THC is stable, but not as stable. So THC will tend to oxidize to CBN at a much faster rate than something like CBD. So in apples to apples comparison, it's easier to get a 1 or 2 year shelf life out of a CBD based product. THC is a little bit harder to do. Other rules of thumb is cannabinoids as a whole, like the higher acid products, so lower pH. They are more stable. As you move away from those ranges, and I'm going to use volcanic ash water as an example, that's like a pH of 8.8 in a clear bottle. There is an enormous amount of challenges there to actually put a product in there, say 25 milligrams of CBD, put it on the store shelf, and when consumers pick that up 3 months later, to actually have anything in there at all. Some huge challenges there. So really learn some of the world, the mother nature effects, so we will, of cannabinoids, of what's things that they are the most happiest and stable in versus what's unstable. You'll see some of the rules of thumb that apply to, say, the beverage industry for beer also apply for cannabinoids. So things like the effect of light, the effect of heat creates all flavors in beer. So same thing with cannabinoids. You get those factors in there, say in clear beverages, for example, be careful. You can have a product that was fresh when you made it, and you come back 6 months later off the shelf and you're getting inherent skunkiness and color changes and flavor changes. Yeah.
And I know you guys are really big on the quality of the ingredients that you're using, right? To create, and that's something that I think a lot of people overlook in the cannabis industry, most people that are buying these sorts of premium products, they're the type of folks that don't really want to be consuming chemicals, right? And so,
Right.
how do you, what types of things do you guys do? I know, or what should folks look out for from other products that might be indicators that there's chemicals present?
Actually, that's a multi-part question. What we do is we start with the basics. I mean, everything we work with has to be GRAS listed, so generally recognized as safe ingredients. So it's got to be intended for food use. Surprised still in the space that there's some smaller companies that are sourcing ingredients from questionable places. There's no reason for that. So everything is sourced should be legit from sourcing from, I strongly prefer working with the much larger manufacturers who themselves also have really strong quality programs in place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's the first part, really sourcing. Like, we will not source what's from, really try to avoid sourcing from any smaller companies that they can't do the full traceability. They can't show the full C of A's. They can't show all the due diligence on their end for GMPs. So that's the first starting point, really who you're partnering up with for the raw materials. The other part that we are adamant about is, label this like it's truly regulated by the FDA. Work in a future state where everything that is in your product is on the label. And I think that's super, super important, because we're still in an industry space where, since it's not regulated enough yet from a compliance standpoint, many manufacturers are taking a lot of liberties on how they label their product, and they're intentionally leaving off the emulsifiers that are being used, or other ingredients, or taking some very creative labeling that's in there. And I flat out don't agree with that. I mean, you need to be very strict on how you label. You need to make sure all the allergens are present or properly labeled, and all the nutritional, and anything that goes in that product has to be on the label. And I use what we use by the FDA standards in standard food and beverage products. So it's a two-part question, or a two-part answer. We start with the supply chain, really working with very legitimate companies, because I think anybody's been in this business for a while, it's only a matter of time when you work with the wrong players on the raw material side, you're going to get thrown a curveball that's going to cause you lots of headaches. And I'm going to use an example where we wound up, and this is briefly looking, we never used it. We did enough quality assurance programs up front to catch this. Something as simple as using a sugar type compound, which would be very generic. We went offshores just to see if they could provide like they said they could. And I can't tell you enough how this was a big company. They had all the C of A's in place, they had all the technical data in place, yet the product failed miserably. So there's something when they talk about 99% purity, they couldn't tell us what that other 1% impurities were, and it caused lots of issues. So for us, as a rule of thumb, go with the bigger, well-established players on the supply chain.
Wow, that's good advice. You mentioned something earlier. I want to go back to that was interesting. It was out of the science that you guys are pursuing around absorption. That you're actually, with the process that you're deploying for water solubility, is actually increasing the absorption of the cannabinoids versus other delivery systems. Do I have that correct?
Absolutely, Ashley. It's not uncommon to see anywhere from 2, 3, 4, or 5x total increase in concentration by making it water soluble.
Now, have you compared that to other types of water soluble processes yet?
Yes. And I'm going to give you a rule of thumb.
Okay.
What we're seeing, and there's not a lot of clinical research yet in edibles in a space. There's very, very few out there that are published. So doing the research right now is considered cutting edge or leading edge, right? So looking at different emulsifiers, we've seen emulsifiers become non-predictive. So you think one would work well and the other one wouldn't work well. So we've seen differences in, say, our products and some competitor products. I just finished looking at some data on another company that was making some very aggressive claims on how well something was water soluble. Mm-hmm. And they have no data to back their claim. And On a side-to-side comparison, the difference was drastic. So at the, say, early absorption mark, and this is all about being fast absorbing, once again, a 200% increase in rate of absorption, just difference on
So it's not, that's where I was kind of digging to, right? It's not necessarily water solubility, quote unquote, that's driving this. It's how it's made, how the process of water solubility is just as important as it being water soluble.
It's how it's packaged. Exactly. Right. Actually, it's everything coming together. It's what type of emulsifier you're using, how are you actually putting it together and processing it.
Yeah.
They all, and even down to the details of what ratio of ingredients are you using within the emulsifiers.
So this must be tough. I'm just thinking, putting myself back into, back when we used to work together, for your marketing and sales leads, to explain this, right? Because I'm sure they're fighting with, the low cost provider out there who's coming in and saying, I'll get water solubility and we got it clean, right? That's probably as close as they can get. How are you educating folks around this? Because I know it's tricky.
Surprisingly, Ashley, there's been a lot of interest from, especially the larger clients, potential clients, in the science behind what's making a good water soluble emulsion. So
Good.
There's a lot of interest in, and there's been, to be honest, the clinical research has gotten more attention from customers than I ever would have expected. Because they see the due diligence and science behind it. It actually begs a lot of questions on their end that they come with questions versus it almost becomes a pull for information versus a push on the science.
No, it's great to be talking to you about it again. And, when we were working together before, this was just all coming together. You were just getting started, right? And it was going from an idea into implementation. And here we are with actual results, and it's fantastic. I thank you for taking the time to share this. Is there anything you'd like to share? Anything I didn't ask about that you want to kind of get the word out, or what people should look for with water solubility, or something maybe new on the horizon?
So some of the studies that are on the horizon is going beyond just pharmacokinetics and start looking at effects. So for example, if I'm taking CBD for relaxation or for sleep, does it really work? Can I prove it works? How much do I need? Right. So looking into that. We are going into a multi-state expansion. So moving into the state of Michigan next. So we'll be ready to go, setting up a new factory and setting up everything in the fall. And I think the other thing that's good to know about getting the name out is we license our technology to the Green Organic Dutchman up in Canada, so TGOD, and they are also selling Ripple and gummies and some of our new quick sticks, which is direct to tongue products, water as well. So what's nice to see is the product format is starting to get out now in the THC arena in different areas. So up north in Canada and into Michigan next. And then the CBD space continues to get more and more in the direct to consumer, potentially around convenience channels, like a Circle K, for example.
Yeah, congratulations on that too, by the way. That's good stuff.
Thank you.
Well, Keith, thank you for your time today. It was great catching up with you again, and I'd love to maybe catch up off the air sometime soon, and maybe have lunch and talk about how things are going.
Sounds great, Ashley. Thank you again.
All right, be well, Keith. Take care.
All right, have a good one.